The Republican Party, 1854. The Republican Party, 2016. It is a construction out of pieces that are illogical. In 1854, it was constructed out of the failure of the Whigs. It was constructed out of the failure of the Know Nothing Party, chiefly an anti-immigrant party. It was constructed out of the failure of the Free Soil Party. It was constructed out of the failure of the Liberty Party. All these different approaches to doing the right thing. 2016, the Republican Party. It is constructed out of pieces. And some of those pieces have failed. Some of those pieces will succeed. We just won a big election, or did it? There's an event on Sunday, and I welcome my colleague and co-host, Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, and the host of Opinion Journal, because Mary and I, and we're joined by Mona Charen of the National Review Online, are going to look at an event upcoming in the next 48 hours, 96 hours in New York, the center of the political universe right now. Because Mitt Romney, representing the Republican establishment, is coming to New York. He's traveling to the mountain, just the way the Prime Minister of Japan just did, to sit and speak with the President-elect of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Mary, a very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Mitt Romney coming to New York to sit with Donald J. Trump. Yes, we can look at the cynical spin out of Washington that this is just mending fences, a mask, and the Trump campaign is going to go on with its populism. But Romney does not play for masks. Romney is a very serious Republican candidate for the presidency in 2012. Sitting with Donald J. Trump suggests that Romney wants to heal the divisions in the party.
Yeah, I think Romney's intentions were always good. He was an absolutely horrific candidate in 2012. He had no idea what it took to run for president or how to win the presidency. And he surrounded himself with a group of insiders that told him what he wanted to hear. And he ran a biographical campaign. And he never explained why President Obama's policies didn't work and why his policies were better. He simply assumed that he would win. But his intentions were always good. And as a private individual, Mitt Romney is one of the best guys you'd ever want to meet, an honorable man.
During the recent campaign, Mitt Romney was a sizable, defiant figure in the Republican Party to Donald J. Trump's candidacy.
He was, and in fact, he, recall, gave a very, very prominent speech earlier this year where he claimed that if Trump were to implement his policies, we'd have economic destruction and distress all over the world. I'm paraphrasing, of course. You can go online, you can look it up. There's a transcript.
We welcome Mona Charen because we're dealing with ironies here, the Republican Party. Mona, is détente about to break out in New York City when Romney sits with Trump? Good evening to you, Mona.
Good evening, John. Good evening, Mary. Always delightful to be with you. This is a very significant piece of news because of what it suggests about the president-elect. If Donald Trump has the magnanimity and the willingness to overlook past slights that this suggests, then we are dealing with a different man than the one we saw during the campaign, where he was testy and score-settling and nasty to opponents and demanding fealty from all and sundry. So if he is, in the name of being able to govern, in the name of unifying the party, able to move past Romney's speech against him, which was very tough, it wasn't personal or nasty, but it was quite devastating. He called him a fraud, and a con man. So if Trump is able to go past that, I think it says very good things about his willingness to get people on his team who have experience and judgment, and that's of course what he needs most of all.
Trump seems to care a lot about loyalty, and we've seen only a few individuals, Senator Jeff Sessions, for instance, Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who it's being reported now is being offered national security advisor. Only a small group of people remained loyal to Trump, and there was a fear that he would simply elevate and promote those people. Does this mean that he might value experience over loyalty, Mona?
Right. So it was a very weird year, Mary, right? And so if he were going to try to staff the Trump administration only with loyalists, he would run out after about 12 or 13. I mean, because so many Republicans were appalled by the campaign that he ran and kept their distance, and so cannot be considered loyalists. And so it really perforce. I mean, he has to reach out to some degree. And he's having Nikki Haley come by Trump Tower. He's having she was also critical of him, and so he will if he is able to keep his own resentments in check about the people who not only were not loyalists but were actual opponents. Then there's no limit to what he could achieve, because everybody is willing to let bygones be bygones who oppose Trump now that he has won. That's kind of the nature of winning. That's the way it happens.
It might be that Mitt Romney, as he travels across Fifth Avenue to Trump Tower, has to pick his way through protesters. And I'm puzzling here, Mona, because you have a piece up at Ricochet about this. The protests against the president-elect, against the Republican Party, and I'll include what you'd have to say, denunciations. That's a strong word, but it looks like that in the editorial pages.
That's a euphemism, John.
In the editorial pages of the major newspapers, and I read the New Yorker every moment I can, because Ryan Liza and David Remnick are writing Jeremiads daily against Donald J. Trump. All of that, Mona, makes it a lot easier to work together as Republicans. We're surrounded by catcalling, and that's what your Ricochet piece points to.
Right, and these protesters really are making it easier for Republicans to unite, exactly as you say, John. I mean, for example, flying the Mexican flag, flying the Palestinian flag when you're protesting an American election, excuse me, but that's offensive. And look, I'm a squishy moderate on the matter of immigration, but when you have people who are here illegally demanding their rights, you sort of scratch your head and say, well, wait a minute, you don't actually have rights. You're not here legally. So,
but Mona, it also lowers the expectation for the administration of Donald J. Trump if you call him all sorts of names and lower the bar.
Well, and of course you devalue, part of the problem that the left has had over the last few cycles is that they have lost their credibility. They call every Republican a racist. They called Mitt Romney and John McCain and so forth. Everybody's a racist. Well, if that's the case, then nobody is. And once you do that, you devalue the term. And you know what? There are some real racists. And you want to hold that word in reserve so that it still maintains its bite when you need it.
Bite, Mona. Wolf, wolf. Wolf, wolf. It's a fairy tale we tell our children. Do the Democrats know it?
They may be learning it now, but a little too late for them.
They're calling out wolf, wolf in front of Trump Tower. It's so routine now. It's a puzzle.
Yes.
So I'm going to appeal. I'm going to appeal to what? Intelligence? These are figures who have great accomplishments.
But John, this is part of what's happened to the left, is that they've lost the capacity to think clearly. They are so brainwashed about race, class, and gender that it's their go-to accusation all the time. It's the only thing they ever have to say. They never say anything interesting. There are a lot of interesting ways you could criticize Mr. Trump, and many people actually on the conservative side have done it. They said, look, there are serious problems with conflict of interest. There are serious problems with temperament. There are serious problems with maybe he doesn't control his tongue, whatever. I mean, he represents a cornucopia of things you could have criticized. But the left, they sound, when they're criticizing Trump, you just know that they'd be saying the same things about John Kasich or about Cruz or about Rubio if they had won the election.
But Mona, the core problem is that the ideas of the left didn't work. You had that grand experiment of Obama for 8 years of higher taxes and government spending on the domestic side and American retreat on the foreign policy side. So
right.
Isn't it sort of natural for them to resort to interest group politics?
Well, I'll just say, whether it is or not, let me just say this after my decades now of watching American politics. Whenever one side wins a decisive political victory, as the Republicans have this year, they tend to want to say, okay, that means we won the argument. And it never turns out that way. The American people are not ideological. They are not inclined to draw lessons about whether big government works or doesn't work. They simply, it seems to me, they simply look at their situation, they look at their well-being, and they decide up or down on the party in power. And to think that they will say, you know what, the left really failed, those policies didn't work, I'm not sure it really goes quite that far. I think it's a little bit more basic than that, up or down.
You remind me, Mona, that we Republicans need to act like a conqueror in Rome, driving our chariot past the hurrahs of the crowd, and a slave in our ear whispers, reminding us we're mortal. Is that what you're saying, Mona?
Well, that's one of the things. Yes, you can err by being overconfident and cocky too, and it's best to take every victory as provisional and to remember that the voters. You know, we were talking before we went on air about the great Democratic victory of 2008, and it seemed that the Republican Party was decimated, and it came roaring back in 2010. I mean, the every 2 years we have another election. And Republicans should take nothing for granted.
Yes, and our European cousins, we like frequent elections. Frequent. That's the way we do it. We like to tussle frequently. Mona Charen of the National Review Online, and writing at Ricochet about Wolf. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, and the host of Opinion Journal at WSJ Video. Wolf. I'm John Batchelor.